thank you. So good morning, everyone. Call this meeting of Community Planning and Economic Development to order. Just want to acknowledge some of the people that we have on the call. We have committee members, Deputy Mayor Ben Winograd, and from Puerto Rico, Councilor Alberto Cortez. We also have council members Deb Poland and Barry Walters and Mayor Sherry Cantor. We have Greg Summer, Todd Dumay, and James Brennan. I think, is there anyone else that I miss? Oh, yes. Kristen Gorski. And also just joining us, Lauren Siegel. So the first item is approval of the minutes. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, the minutes have been approved. Then I will move over to our town manager to go over item B, which are the easements over 1800 Asylum Avenue and 1710 Asylum Avenue.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everyone. As the council knows, as part of our stormwater management plan, we had previously identified the need to replace 3 culverts along the former Yukon campus. So we had first one is at Asylum in Trout Brook. The second one is at the former pedestrian walkway between the parking lot and former campus. And then the third is at Lawler, Haynes, and Lindy. We have funding for the first 2 culverts in our capital improvement plan and have applied for grants for the third culvert from both the state as well as through a congressionally directed spending grant through Senator Murphy's office. With regards to the first 2 culverts, we are moving the permitting process forward, which would require the town council to receive these easements at the June 25th council meeting. At that point, the council would refer to the Town Plan and Zoning Commission for their review on July 1st. And then that would be returned formally to the council on July 16th for final approval. I'll just pause there. I don't know if our town engineer, Greg Summer, had anything he wanted to add to those comments. Through you, Madam Chair.
Good morning, and thank you, Rick. Again, Greg Summer, West Hartford Town Engineer. No, I think you covered most of it, Rick. I think the only thing, we're still working with the state for the one easement at 1710, and then working with the developer for 1800. Still trying to get those easements ironed out, but did want to bring it to you at this point, not knowing what the schedule is over the summer months for the subcommittee to meet. So that's why it might be a little bit early, but we're still hoping that we'll get on the full council agenda for the 25th with these easements ready to go for you.
Thank you, Greg, and through you, Madam Chair, happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Does anyone have any questions? Deputy Mayor?
Since it'll probably come up, given, does this have any relationship, or how does this interact with the 1700 approved project and the proposed 1800? Does these have anything to do with those developers, or we work with it?
Through you, Madam Chair, certainly the easements will involve the developer, but it does not impact, and our town planner is here as well. He can certainly opine if with a different comment, but in terms of the development that was previously approved by the council for 1700, this would not impact that approval. I do not believe it would impact 1800 either. This is something, as we've discussed over the last couple of years, it is something that we will be doing regardless of an approval for 1800 or not. Something that's very important to the flooding that has been occurring, not just in that neighborhood, but the Feet neighborhood, which is to the southeast of the culverts here at Trout Brook as well. So it's part of our overall stormwater management plan, and one of the 6 areas that we need to address over the next 20 years or so.
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you. I just wanted to get that clarified. Anticipation of questions. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions on the easements? Okay, seeing none, we can move to item C, which is the Affordable Housing Program update.
Yes, thank you again, Madam Chair. So we're pleased to have the opportunity to discuss a draft of the town's affordable housing plan. This draft has been before CPED a few times now over the last several months. And as we all know, the state statute requires that once every 5 years, each municipality shall prepare an affordable housing plan that specifies how we anticipate to increase the number of affordable housing units here in town. We had formed an affordable housing advisory committee to assist us with this task. We had also engaged the services of Goldman and York to assist us as well. And you may remember we had Don Poland join us for a presentation a few months back at a CPED meeting. However, what I think is even more important than all of that work that we have put in developing the plan, this plan over the last several months, more importantly is what the town council has been doing over the last several years to focus on affordable housing. That included appropriating nearly a quarter of our ARPA funds, or $6 million, for the creation of an affordable housing development program, which provided financial assistance to the development of a new affordable housing throughout town. And I'm really not sure there's another town or city in the state that has made that kind of financial commitment as we have done here in West Hartford. And the commitment by our council over the last several years has led to an additional 522 new affordable units, which is literally moving the needle for us in terms of moving towards the goal of reaching 10% of our housing stock being affordable. Since our last update, we have amended our plan to include these updated numbers, as well as new changes that have been required by the Connecticut General Statute, which includes providing affordable housing to persons with disabilities, and the other working towards middle housing. So assuming the council, as we go through this discussion this morning, assuming that the council is okay with these changes, we would bring this plan to the full council by resolution for a formal vote. So with that opening, I will pause there, turn to our town planner, Todd Dumais, who's, as folks know, has been the architect of this plan. And Todd can give us a brief summary of some of these changes. Through you, Madam Chair, I'll turn it over to our town planner. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Rick did a great job providing a summary and an overview of where we are and where we last were. What I'd like to do is just highlight something that the town manager opened with. Can everyone see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
So this number, there's actually a typo here, but as of 2023, the state of Connecticut Department of Housing updated its affordable housing units listing. So this is a program whereby the state counts qualified affordable units, and those come in a series of different categories, highlighted here in the small chart: government assistance, tenant rental assistance, CHFA mortgages, or deed restricted units. If you take all of those that are on the state's inventory, total those are your total assisted units, divide that into or by the total housing units a community. It gives you your percentage of qualified affordable units. And this is as a formula under the state's 830G program. So the 2023 numbers, we had updated this report because those were released at the last time we met, but they weren't. We actually went slightly down in the percent affordable, and that's because the categories of tenant rental assistances, mortgages, and government assistance, those tend to fluctuate year over year. The most stable bucket of protected or assisted qualified affordable units comes vis-a-vis deed restrictions, because those are long-term in perpetuity, generally 20, 30, or 40 years, depending how they're defined. So out of the 27,000 units of housing, that comes from the 2020 census and Department of Housing data, approximately 7.65% are affordable. Now, having said that, and as the town manager highlighted, because of the council's work over the last few years, there's actually approximately 522 qualified affordable units that are not counted by the state at this point, either because they're in the approval or development pipeline, they're under construction, or they just came online and the state is not aware of the deed restrictions. If you take those 522 units and you put that in and even increase the denominator and the numerator to account for the new market rate units, as the town manager said, it impressively, and I didn't think this was possible, moves the needle up from 7.65 to close to 9%. And that could happen, assuming all the units come online and are CO'd in the next few years. So that really is an impressive number of total units. And of those 522, those are all deed restricted units through your development review and approval process. And in the strategy section, we reorganized this to kind of highlight that approval path and where those units came from. So those 522 come from a number of constructed or occupied, a small amount at the residence at Berkshire, a larger number at One Park, both 540 New Park, the Faxon, and then we have a number of significant projects the council is all familiar with that are under construction, the Byline at Farmington Avenue, Trout Brook, 950 Trout Brook, the former Children's Museum site, Fellowship Housing up in Starkle Road, and then 900 Farmington Avenue, all again under construction, all with significant percentages of affordable. And then there's another bucket of a significant number of units that all contain some amount or a significant amount of affordable units. The strategies have remained unchanged, just slightly reorganized since the last time you've seen this listed. But I did want to highlight on two of the changes that the town manager mentioned, and those are a requirement to have the plan address or note that it's continued to improve the accessibility for affordable housing units throughout the community for intellectually disabled or other developmental disabilities. And the town already does this through its disability services and its advisory commissions on persons with disabilities and senior citizen advisory group. So the plan just references that and suggests we should continue to do that and prioritize that with our nonprofit organization partners. In addition, I added in here an important component that was not called out, but something that the town has been doing for many years, is to continue to utilize and consider expanding the use of the community development block grant program. And this is really for homeowner rehabilitation. Residents who seek assistance through that program, once obtained assistance and homeowners improve their homes, those actually count towards our affordable housing numbers. And then lastly, there was another change to the state statute that the town manager mentioned. And that was recently adopted a few weeks ago. It's Public Act 24-143. This is a provision for increasing the so-called as of right middle housing. Middle housing is defined in that new act as any housing type of a duplex, a triplex, quadplex, which is a kind of an interesting term, or cottage cluster or townhomes. So they're anything other than a single family or anything other than a large multifamily housing project. And the way this new act reads is something that we need to actually explore going forward, is to have your zoning proactively allow for this type of housing through an as of right process, meaning that you can't require a special permit or any other type of zoning approval other than administrative site plan review. Any units created through that process count on a point equivalency basis, and the statute defines that as basically for every unit created, and it does not have to be deed restricted and affordable in any way. It's just that type of housing unit will count as a quarter point towards qualified affordable housing totals. The idea here is to target a type of housing that has largely not been picked up and carried forward by the market, and to create a new type of housing product that is generally and naturally occurring affordable housing product. The one thing that's not clear, it appears that the statute is geared towards the creation of new housing types and not existing housing stock. And just as a point of reference, if we take our 2020 POCD numbers, those type of housing units within the community, if we add up condominiums, which qualify under this 3 and 4 family or 2 family, that's somewhere around close to 20% of the housing stock in West Hartford. And if you did the point equivalency, that would be somewhere in the ballpark of another 1,200 units, were those all to be allocated or counted under this new system towards our number, so that our overall number would jump even higher. With that, I will pause there and turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions on the presentation? Thank you for that. Are there any questions from the committee members? Councilor Cortez.
You, Madam Chair. This question for Todd. So that new law, basically, if we can count those numbers, would probably put us in that 10% range that we need to be at.
Madam Chair, through you to Councilor Cortez, it would put us well north of that number. Again, I don't think the act was intended to count existing housing stock, but the plan suggests we should explore the impact of that act and see if we need to amend our zoning regulations. Having said that, we already permit an as of right type of housing development for 2 and 3 and 4 families. We have a number of zones that permit that as of right. And that's actually evidenced by the fact that we have so many housing unit types in that category of housing.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Winograd.
Thank you. So I do have a sort of number of questions and concerns, some of which I've raised previously. On that last, I mean, there's a lot in here. I love the so the demographics and everything else. There's some really great research in here that's useful. And a lot to work through. Some of the age changes is also very interesting. And again, it's the evaluation of our current stock. And I thank you all for that, for all that work. Like I said, this is going to be a document I think we'll want to go back to and look and like our POCD for a lot of great information. Couple things. One, I do, and I like the addition to that last point. Reevaluate our current. I think we need to be looking at our current zoning maps and look at where, we've been talking about this. It's in the POCD as well, for that sort of missing middle, and whether that should be expanded in terms of areas where that is as of right. And I think that that's certainly part of the charge in POCD to look at those again. They do need to be reviewed. occasionally, to see whether or not that's still appropriate and whether smaller homes or two families and all, are appropriate in different areas. So I think this does open that up to have those discussions. So one of my concerns is just on sort of definitional. When we refer to the 10% in different ways, the mandate is required. And I've said before, I think we probably put too much emphasis on it. As I understand it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding, because I may have missed some new stuff. I mean, the 10% is a threshold. If you're below 10%, there are different rules that apply. And obviously, a developer can come in and have sort of broader powers to build something if we're under 10%, as determined by the state. But other than that, there is no mandate. There's no fair share that didn't pass. I know there are efforts to do that. So we talk about required 10%. Is there such a requirement? Because obviously a lot of towns are way below that.
Madam Chair, through you to Deputy Mayor Winograd, you're correct. It's a subtle designation. So that number, that 10% threshold, that was a number that was created by the state of Connecticut, and you have to look at that. And the plan actually has a whole section that discusses this. That 10% threshold, and again, it's a threshold, not a requirement, is tied to the quote unquote 830G program. And this is there's different terms for it, but it's an affordable housing appeals program or a developer's remedy. So it was determined by the state that 10% threshold, any community in the state that falls under that number would be eligible for a developer to bring a quote unquote 830G development application to a community. And that would basically flip the normal course and burdens for an approval from the developer to the town to demonstrate why the town should not approve something. And it really changes the dynamic of that process. So that's where that 10% threshold comes from. And actually in the report and in the plan, we talk about that 10% threshold. And it's still an important number, but it's not a determination of our affordable housing needs. And the plan itself says that we have actually a much higher need than just that 10% number. So I think your point is a good one, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, and through you. So again, where we've got the word required, I just think it's not legally accurate, and that we shouldn't use that term required. And I think what happens, and it's certainly not just in this report, is when we emphasize the 10%, I think we take our eyes off the ball to some extent as to our goals. So when we get to page, sorry, I'm looking at another screen. Housing needs versus page 27. If you can pull that up, maybe it might be easier if we're all looking at the same thing. So and then we get to analyze West Hartford's capacity. Qualified. The first objective is to ensure the current percentage does not decrease. The second objective is to achieve at a minimum the 10% threshold. And I guess I don't think those are the right priorities. I think the number one priority is to build more housing, and it's a general affordability. And if we're focused on it, it feels like because we talk about 10% as required, then we start focusing on that number. And I think that can lead us down the wrong path. So if, for example, if we add to every house that we build, if someone built, 5 non-qualified townhouses, someone would come in and say, well, that would lower the percentage. And your first priority is increasing making the percentage higher, but someone just put in 5 that maybe don't count for some reason. Even if they're not luxury, they may not otherwise be considered qualified affordable housing units. And then that becomes a reason to oppose development. And I think to the manager's initial point, I think, listen, we're doing a great job already without this. And so, to some extent, I get state law requires us to have this plan. I don't want to make things worse. I don't want to create sort of objections to the developments that actually do meet our real goals, even if they don't contribute to the 10% threshold. So maybe we can rework that. Does that make sense? I mean, again, I guess, you know, the goal, like, I get the goal should be more, and the goal should be
So
broad
I
affordability.
it makes sense. I think also you have to read this in context with the POCD, which in the POCD, there's a broader lens here, and it suggests, yes, the goal is more housing, right? The POCD is very clear about more housing type, more housing diversity of all types. This plan is a little bit more narrowly focused in that, you know, we do need to increase, you know, some affordable housing, and it's trying to define what that is, and it uses that 10% threshold as a proxy or as a number to discuss and frame. I would worry, you know, not addressing that or mentioning it here. You know, I think we don't want to lose ground because if we did not have an emphasis on affordable housing or deed restricting, that 522 wouldn't exist, Deputy Mayor. They would, you know, the market isn't producing, except for developers who are specifically mission oriented or purpose driven for affordable housing. We're really not producing affordable units through the market rate process. So you know, I see your point, and I get that. I see if we can go back and rework this section to be a little bit more clear and maybe a little broader, and have the first, you know, reference the POCD here as the preamble that, you know, the goal and the purpose is to produce more housing types, multifamily and all types, and then rework this to your point.
Thank you. Through you, I know I'm monopolizing a little bit, but there's a lot here. I think that would be helpful. I think that so the next just piece of it, we get to the solutions, and I know we've had discussions before about the inclusionary zoning, and adding in sort of payment in lieu of as a potential remedy to help fund how, you know, as funding mechanism for a housing fund. I'd asked before, you know, sort of for an evaluation about whether or not actually having an inclusionary zoning requirement would potentially have a negative impact compared to our, you know, we don't want to drive somebody out who wants to build here to go to a town that doesn't have that requirement. We certainly encourage it. We've been doing, you know, I think you've been doing a great job in new developers and sort of getting that plus factor. We've done, obviously we have incentive bonuses and all that sort of thing to try to encourage developers to add in affordable units. But whether, you know, what we don't want to do, of course, is, you know, increase the cost of building here to an extent where we lose projects. So that again becomes a concern. And again, I'm sort of open to the idea that inclusionary zoning it might be a valuable tool, but I'm not sure whether the data supports that, and whether, you know, any kind of increased cost just can have that opposite effect. And certainly towns that have that, I haven't, you know, I'm not sure we have good examples locally. I know it's been popular in Fairfield County with, I think, varying results.
Yeah, Councilor Winograd, we've had this discussion, and the plan is just suggesting we further evaluate it, you know, to do that deeper dive into it. There are markets and communities where this is absolutely a viable tool, and it does not disincentivize the production of any, you know, housing generally, and it does further the goals of inclusionary. And this is just saying, you know, all the strategies in this section of the report are just things we could consider that have worked elsewhere and can work. It's not suggesting that we have to do any one of them. It's trying to frame, you know, options to further the affordable housing needs production in the community. So I hear you, and I do agree that this requires a more nuanced and a deeper dive, and that's why it's not very specific in the plan currently.
And just one final point. So maybe when I read it, it feels a little stronger than that, especially since we're passing it. This isn't sort of an outside group giving us advice. It's us signing on to a plan. And so us telling ourselves to consider stuff feels stronger. So maybe adding some language that, in studying it, that's where we're also looking at that sort of potential impact on the market. So that it's a goal of looking at it to make sure that it is a positive move as opposed and sort of consider the potential downside and economics of that, so that we actually, sort of aren't over promising and, endorsing something that, again, I don't think we've figured out yet whether or not is something that would be beneficial. And with that, I don't have any more comments, Madam Chair. Thank you for the indulgence.
Okay, are there any other questions from anyone else? Okay. So this will be coming up. What meeting will this?
Madam Chair, I think based on Deputy Mayor Winograd's comments, I think we need to soften up a little bit of the language that we have in here right now. So we may need to bring this back just one more time to review that before formally bringing it to the council. Would that make sense?
Sure.
Deputy Mayor suggested a couple of changes that we'll sit with the town planner and review those. To the town planner's points, we have a number of strategies in that section that are all considerations. They're not suggesting that we do them. Some we have done, tax abatements, but that would be a policy decision in terms of whether the council would want to do another one for a future development, or tax incremental financing TIF plans, and things, permit reductions, for building projects. I don't believe that's something that we've done before, but again, that's just considerations that we would, take under review under certain developments. So, but some of the other language that Deputy Mayor suggested, we may need a little, just another meeting to bring that back and clean it up. So it's good to go for a vote in a council meeting.
Okay, we can talk about what meeting it'll be in later. Dancer has.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would expect that we would have something definitely by August, but we could strive for the July meeting. I don't know if we're going to have a committee meeting prior, because we have brought this forward, discussed it a lot. I do think we could probably have a revised wording for us in advance of the meeting. I don't know if we have to have a committee meeting on that. I would be okay with that. I don't know how the rest of you feel about it, but I would say either July or August would be a good goal. And again, what I want to emphasize to everyone is the fact that we haven't adopted an affordable housing plan does not mean that we haven't been on very, very intentionally working on this for a long time, and the numbers reflect it. So I want to thank everybody for their work. And I think that toolkit that maybe needs to be clearer that it is a toolkit, and each project might feel and need a little bit of different help and support to make it come to fruition, and a little different vision. So that is extremely helpful. I don't think, again, one plan across the board works in our community because of all the things that we have dealt with and we will be dealing with. So I think what's really, really important, again, is the creativity and the commitment that we have had to increasing housing overall and intentionally working on deed restricted affordable. But I also am very interested, and this has been a discussion, I know Todd has raised this for years, probably decades, I think, about the multifamily housing stock that we have that is not recognized, by the state, has not been in the past, and that's a really important thing. So many other communities do not have that amount of multifamily housing that we have. So how that is reflected in our whole total housing inventory and how that is perceived by the state in reflecting in how we present as this very a community that has an incredible diverse housing stock. Anyway, I think it's important for us to communicate that a little bit better. Thanks.
So right now, I believe the next CPED meeting is scheduled the day after our July council meeting. So we wouldn't have another CPED meeting before that. So if we wanted to move forward in the July meeting, we would need to do what you were talking about, which was give a summary of the changes. And I guess that depends on Rick, if you feel that it needs to come back to the council, or if we can just have the plan with a summary of the changes. I mean, come back to the committee before.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think, following on the mayor's comments, I think that the changes are subtle enough where I think we could do that and send it out to the council for a quick review and then bring it straight to a council meeting for a formal vote. If that's okay with everyone, I think it's a good suggestion.
Yes, that's fine. Is everyone okay with that? Okay, so if there are no other questions on this, we can move on to our third item, which is the wayfinding signage presentation.
Yes, thank you. So it's been a while since we've updated CPED on our wayfinding signing project. As folks know, that project is being led by Kristen Gorski, who heads up our economic development office. And we've had a couple of benchmarks that we've hit over the last couple of weeks and wanted to update CPED as to where we are presently and then next steps over the next couple of months. So through you, Madam Chair, I will turn it over to Kristen Gorski, who can walk us through some of those updates. Thank you.
Great. Good morning. Thank you, Town Manager Ledwith. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, as Town Manager Ledwith mentioned, wayfinding signage project, just wanted to give the committee a update in terms of where we are. I'm just going to start briefly with a refresher on background. So the intent behind this particular project, which is partially funded through ARPA funds, is to develop a signage and wayfinding system that will present a consistent image and unifying branding throughout the town. The development of a comprehensive signage program will help to more easily direct residents, employees, and visitors to their destination. There's a couple of different elements that we've worked really hard in order to incorporate. Highlights include our business districts, pointing towards our great parks, municipal facilities, so on and so forth. We have done quite a bit of stakeholder engagement throughout the course of the project. This is just a highlight of many of the folks who have been very helpful in terms of offering feedback and insights specific to different destinations. Again, the business associations through the business districts, arts and culture. Many town staff have been quite helpful. And then our town historian, Tracy Wilson. As a part of our stakeholder engagement, as a refresher, we did do a survey very early in the project. So we initially went to council and got funding allocated for the project back in September of 22. We brought on our consultant Merge, who is a national wayfinding signage consultant, in November of 22, and we issued the survey in December of 22, kept it open through January of 23 while we were having these stakeholder meetings. Some project milestones, as I talked about, stakeholder engagement. We have also brought this, in addition to what I just mentioned with the business districts and the various destinations, arts and culture, we have been providing very consistent updates to all 5 of the business associations, to their districts and members, as well as providing consistent quarterly updates to the West Hartford Chamber of Commerce Economic Development Committee. Boards and commissions that we have met with and given presentations to. We had met with Design Review Advisory Committee back in May of last year through a staff municipal working group that really serves as the steering committee to move this project along. We had worked with Merge to come up with 3 design options. The steering committee advanced 2 options. We took those 2 options to Design Review Advisory Committee, and they were very supportive of the branded option, which I will show you again in a couple of minutes. And that branded option is consistent with the town's new branding and logo that we had adopted several years ago. That was consistent with the municipal working group and the steering committee in terms of what their preference was. That is what we then presented to CPED last June. So it's been about a year since we last brought a formal update, an extensive update on this project to the CPED committee. And all boards and commissions that I just talked about were in alignment of moving forward with the branded design option. Since then, Merge has worked very, very hard to come up with a design development package which I will show you the different types of signs that are included in that sign package. They include gateways, kiosks, pedestrian directional, parking and vehicular signs. A full design package as a draft was worked on for a number of months. It was about 6 to 8 months of back and forth with Merge, where they came into town a couple of times. They, did an overall reference of what signs do we have, what signs do we need, what did we hear from the stakeholders through the survey, as well as through the various meetings that we had held. What, from a best practices perspective, should really be proposed. And all of the information and research that was gathered, they came up with this draft design development package. So that was turned over to staff in January, February of this year. Several staff that were very helpful in reviewing that include John Phillips, our Director of Public Works, Brooke Nelson with the Parking Authority, Jim Brennan, our Assistant Town Engineer, Dwayne Martin, our Community Development Director. They were incredibly helpful to go through all of this really over-programmed package and help to make sure that all of the verbiage was correct, that the arrows on the signs were pointing in the right direction. If there were any additional signs that we thought might be missing, that those were added. If we needed to switch out a specific destination, or even if we needed to remove a sign that was being proposed because it was a duplicative, or perhaps it was just unnecessary. So thank you to all of those town staff who were very helpful in that. And that programming was returned to Merge in March of this year. And then they turned back based on all of that correction and amendment that staff had sent over. They turned back a draft design development package in May of 24. And then based on that, we connected with the Connecticut Department of Transportation. So there are a number of signs that we have in town that are being proposed as part of this package that are on state roads. So they would require state DOT review and approval. So what we had worked with Merge on is creating a fine-tuned package that was very specific to all of the state roads and the signs that would be included in DOT's purview. We had submitted that over to DOT for preliminary review in May. And then just last week, we received an okay from DOT that they did a preliminary review and they don't have any outstanding questions at this point, and we are okay to submit a encroachment permit application to the state at whatever point we decide to move forward with that. So that is a great milestone. And then one additional item, as part of, and I will show you this on the next couple of slides, as part of the project, on some of the kiosks that are going to be proposed in specifically in more of the walkable districts, example, several in West Hartford Center, Blueback Square, along the New Park Ave corridor. Those kiosks are 4-side kiosks and have one panel that is available to do some interpretive signage. So that's historical signage, talking about different types of historical events. So that is one element, but separate to that, we've been working with, as I had mentioned earlier, town historian Tracy Wilson. She is assisting a number of private properties to who have the desire to put interpretive and historical markers and signage on their private properties. So it was kind of the perfect opportunity to have consistency with the brand of our larger package. So we are working with Merge right now to come up with a couple of different options that ultimately would be cohesive and intertwine with our larger program and package, but would basically be a template that private property owners could use and pay for their own signs for historical purposes on their own private properties. And these are going to be the programming and sign menus. So I'll just walk through the couple of sign types. There are several different sign types, and this just gives you a good feel for what they look like. This is gateway identification. So in town, excuse me, and within this package, we have approximately 20 different gateways and entrances into West Hartford. They are, arterial roads, main roads coming in and out of town. So we have 3 different sign types that are gateway sign types. So this is what that would look like. Another reference of the 3 different types. Also, depending upon the speed limit, that is one of the determining factors in terms of what type of gateway sign would be proposed on a specific entry point into town. These are vehicular directional signs. So a variety of different signs. Again, as you can see, there are different types. I believe throughout this, there's about 10 different types. Many of them you can afford up to 3 different panels, so you can have 3 different destinations that you are pointing to, but they vary in size and scale, again, depending upon if it's a primary road, what the speed limit is, those types of elements. These are vehicular directional, again, and this is how they would be theoretically placed on different types of roads. And next we have an overview of parking directional and parking identification. So a huge subset of this is West Hartford Center, and really making sure that we are working in tandem with Stantec and the town staff working on the center infrastructure master plan. An element is obviously the pedestrian accessibility, but even bigger is parking. So Stantec, came in and talked about all the different types of parking signs we currently have out there. They're not consistent, they're not branded. There also are a large variety that they are proposing that are currently non-existent. So these are the different types of parking signs that we would be able to implement as part of this program. They are, as you see, there's a couple of different almost kiosks that could point to you. There's signs that would go on some of the roads that you would be able to see as you're driving and approaching one of the garages or parking lots. And then there is also signage to physically be placed on the garages. So we have included in this package our 2 municipal parking garages, and then there is some options for the privately owned town center garage. Another picture of how it can look. We also have proposed in here, as you can see on the lower left-hand side, some pedestrian walkway signs that we could implement as part of this package that really would direct folks from the main road on either LaSalle or Farmington back into the parking lots, because sometimes traffic gets a little bit lost between those buildings. And these are the pedestrian directional signs, as well as the kiosks that I had referenced earlier. So as an example, up in the upper left-hand corner, that is a kiosk. We have several kiosks that are being proposed. They would have an ability to have 3 panels of directional signage pointing to various destinations. Also, we have the ability to put a map on there. So there is a map that is at the corner of LaSalle and Farmington that has not been updated in quite some time. But we do have the ability through this to more easily update as businesses switch in and out. But a map so that people who are coming here and want to understand where they're going between the 2 areas, Blueback and West Hartford Center, they can understand what shops, eateries are there and the continuity between the 2. And then we also have, as I mentioned, an ability to put a historical sign panel on there. So these are the kiosks. And then just as a quick reference, I think the total package that Merge had turned over to us, it contained a lot of signs, but this is ultimately what it looks like. So it is about 60, 65 pages broken down into the different quadrants of town, and it identifies based on, again, best practices, all the research and information that we gathered from the public and the stakeholders, as well as the feedback provided through the town staff steering committee. It provides specific locations with specific sign types. So this is the center, just as a point of reference. I chose this one as an example just because it had so much more than other areas, just because it also incorporated pedestrian, which other areas don't necessarily incorporate. So we have this large package that identifies exactly where a sign type would be located. And then let me just run through a couple of next steps in terms of what we expect from this project, and then I am happy to take any questions. So in total, the number of signs that are currently included in this package are approximately 175. That's about 20 gateway signs, 28 parking signs, 35 pedestrian signs, and then 92 vehicular signs. So with that, we are hopeful to continue to move forward with meeting what we consider the next milestone in this project, right? So we just did a whole bunch of research, stakeholder engagement, did all of the design development, have come up with what we believe is a draft, pretty much final plan. Now, some amendments could be driven through the encroachment permit application process to DOT, but we feel pretty good about where we are with this full package. So what we would want to hit next, prior to moving into the next phase, is submit that encroachment permit application. I spoke with our town planner, Todd Dumais, and we would like to bring the design development package back to the Design Review Advisory Committee informally for a final review. Again, they were very supportive of the look and feel of the signs, and ultimately that branded design that we had chosen to move forward with that I just showed you. So we are hoping to do that next month, in the month of July. We will complete the remaining stakeholder outreach on this project, and what that includes would be communications to organizations that are listed on signs. Based on federal and state regulations, and then best practices for wayfinding signage, what MERGE has advised us on is there's very specific types of destinations, let's say, that can be included on these signs. Can't point to a private business unless it's an arts and cultural institution, but can absolutely point to those. Different business districts, our University of St. Joseph, our university, municipal facilities, parks, things like that, but just can't point to one specific private business. So anyone who is listed as a destination on this full sign package, we will reach out to them and let them know, here are the signs that you will be included on, and here is the location, and just make sure that they don't have any additional feedback on that. And then we anticipate to release a comprehensive press release that talks about everything I just ran through. Based on when the council initially allocated the first tranche of funding for this project back in September of 22, here's what we have done to date, and then here's what we would expect moving forward to wrap up this project, and when residents and businesses can actually see signs being installed. MERGE is currently assisting us with preparing a final cost estimate and budget. So we currently have allocated for the project $500,000 of ARPA funds. After paying for MERGE and the consultant, we have a little over $400,000 left. So consistent with what MERGE has done with all of the communities nationwide that they have worked with, they will help come up with what is the full budget for the entire scope of the project, and then what would phasing look like. And so in other examples in Connecticut, Mansfield, New Haven, Groton, they worked with all of those communities. They had worked on phasing that was, here's the different types of signs that you could implement at one time as part of one phase. And then as funding becomes available to pay for the remainder, here's a second phase, here's a third phase, and what would make the most sense. So you're not focusing on one area of town versus another, you're focusing on more of a sign type. What type of sign can you implement that's consistent across town? And then what would you move from first phase, second phase, third phase? So once we get that, we are hoping towards the end of this summer to be able to, MERGE will assist with preparing bid documents and working with our purchasing office. We hope to go out to bid for a contractor to be able to do the fabrication, installation, and maintenance of the project. And we could see, so long as that process runs smooth, we could start to see fabrication and installation as early as the fall or winter, or, you know, depending upon the weather and obviously how all of the bid process shakes out, it could be early 2025. I also just want to note before I turn over to questions that through this kind of last portion of the project of the planning and moving towards final approvals, communications, and ultimately moving into this kind of bidding process later this summer, I have pulled in our assistant town engineer, Jim Brennan, who's been incredibly helpful, especially with working with the DOT and then thinking through what does this kind of next phase look like. And the next phase would be fabrication, installation, maintenance. So while I, under economic development, have managed the portion of the project that I just reviewed with you, we do expect at some point in time, just because that's what would make the most sense, that this project would likely get turned over for the installation and maintenance portion, likely to our engineering department. So Jim has been very helpful to make sure that we're not overlooking anything, as well as, again, working with the DOT. Questions?
Councilor Cortez.
I'm not sure if I missed it, but is there anything for the parking kiosk? Just let you know what zones they are, because I struggle myself on the app remembering which zone is what. So I didn't notice anything with regards to that.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Councilor Cortez, great question. So I don't, in terms of what you saw on the screen, you did not see it because it wasn't there, but it is something that there is room on the kiosk to be able to incorporate, especially as part of the sign that I talked about that will be included on there. So the sign will show the different parking lots and garages and the different types of businesses, but within those parking lots or garages, there's an ability to put what zone there is for parking. So absolutely, we can incorporate that into the kiosks.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Councilor Walters?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Great stuff. I'm looking forward to it. The question that I have is, how does installation of the signs integrate with all the different projects that are proposed or underway or in some way out there, such as the infrastructure plan, center infrastructure plan, however that will look? The Park Road work, the new Park Avenue work, all areas that I presume that the signs will be installed. I would hate to think we'd be installing them and then moving or replacing them a year or 2 or 3 down the road.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, Councilor Walters, another great question. So as part of this process, as you had seen, we've been working with different town staff who've been very much so involved, particularly our engineering staff. So that has, as well as public works, so that has come up throughout the process, and part of the programming, and a really important part of the programming really of this full package, is talking with our consultant about not just what's currently there, but what's coming down the pipe, right? And so we don't anticipate that there will be any instances where if we go out to install a sign that we're going to have to pull it back because now a project's coming into the neighborhood. We are very cognizant of what is changing and making sure that we would put what's coming, in the future on the sign versus what's currently existing. Now, I think a really important piece to answer your question is because we're kind of running in tandem with various larger projects, i.e., as you mentioned, the center infrastructure master plan, and then we also have a subset of the new Park Ave streetscape in here. We are going to have to, and this is really where the value of having our engineering team involved in this project is, we're going to have to coordinate. So when we move into this, the installation point of this, the piece of this, it's going to be coordinating where are we with these different types of projects. So specific to the new Park Ave corridor, there is a subset in the state funds that we had received to pay for that project that requires some of this type of signage. So now if we are going into, wanting to start to install one phase of this and we're not to the point of construction yet, we'll hold back on that portion. So there will be certain signs that we will be able to install immediately and certain signs that we will have to hold back until the project's construction is complete. And I think the best example of that is the Center Infrastructure Master Plan. A large majority, probably a third of the package is signage that is included in that scope area, and not just the actual, changes that we're contemplating to LaSalle and Farmington. Technically, the scope area of that project extends all the way over to Trout Brook. So in areas, and this is where phasing is going to be really important, in areas where we are not doing any improvements. So again, over on the Trout Brook side of that scope, we might be able to start to install. In Blueback Square, we might be able to start to install, but we would have to hold back on a number of, particularly the pedestrian signage in the center until construction was done with that. So we've contemplated it. It's, future expectations are incorporated in the full design package. It will definitely be a coordination effort that we're aware of. And that's something that Merge will help us work through as we're working to complete the estimated phasing.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from anyone? No? Thank you so much, Kristen, for your presentation. My only question was about the phasing part of it, and you answered that. So we can move now to communications. Do we have any communications, Rick?
We do not, Madam Chair, this morning. Thanks.
Okay, then staff reports.
We do have our town engineer and co-acting director of community development, Greg Summer, who uploaded his report. And for you, Madam Chair, I'll turn it over to Greg, who can just hit a couple of highlights in that report.
Excellent. Thank you, Town Manager Ledwith. Just a couple updates. So on staffing, we are currently actively recruiting in the building division for a building inspector position. And the planning division is also recruiting a zoning enforcement officer, actually in the interview process. So that's hopefully close, and maybe have a better update next month that we'll actually have another staff person on board. As far as the building division goes, you can see the graphs we prepared in your report. We're up about 100 permits processed from where we were about a year ago. And then inspections a little bit lighter, about 60 less than we had last year, at just over 1,000 inspections performed in May. Average plan review time, we're holding consistent at about 3 to 4 weeks for those plan review times, and then average permitting processing time, they've been able to pretty much hold steady. About two days is their average turnaround time, so making good strides in the building department. On the Vision Zero front, the engineering division, a couple exciting things that we have going on. We have a raised crosswalk that we'll be looking to put in on Boulevard at Wardwell. That'll go in later this summer as kind of a pilot. And we'll see how that is, the reactions we get from the public, and then possibly look to move those into other areas as well. We are also looking to install crosswalk warning lights. We've procured some materials. Those should be arriving shortly, and then we'll work with Public Works to install about 10 different locations, primarily around school zones and areas that we've had previous requests for the pedestrian crosswalk lights. And then we also have a bid opening today for our traffic signal backplates. These are the yellow reflective borders that you might see around some traffic signals in town. Just helps the signals stand out a little bit. Again, an incremental measure, but hopefully helps to improve overall traffic safety. And we'll be installing those basically along our high injury network intersections. Our bike facility plan, we're in the process. We had a public info meeting earlier this month. We'll continue to incorporate some of the comments and feedback we've heard, work with the PBC to further that plan, and then probably bring that to a future CPED meeting, probably August most likely. As far as our road construction and paving work goes, we just recently wrapped up our first round of streets. We're already preparing for our July paving round, which will start just after the 4th of July holiday. And that list of streets will be uploaded to the website momentarily here later today. So you'll see that. And then New Park Avenue, we're making good progress working with our consultant VHB. We had a stakeholder meeting again earlier this month. We got some valuable feedback. They're continuing to advance that design and hopefully have a public info meeting probably later this summer and move that project forward, so we'll be out to bid over the winter and be able to construct in 2025. And then the last project I wanted to touch on was the Trout Brook Trail, Phase 3. This is that last piece from Park to Jackson. Bid opening was last week, so we have a contractor. We're looking to get them under contract, and then we'll discuss schedule. But the thought would be that would happen later this summer and should be open by the end of the fall. So we're excited to see that project into completion. And then we'll have the full 3-mile trail network complete. With that, I'll turn it over through you, Madam Chair, to Town Planner Dumais to give a brief update on planning and zoning.
Thank you, Mr. Summer. Just three quick items to update the council on. One, the application for inland wetland and watercourse permitting for 1800 Asylum Avenue. That's the western half of the former Yukon campus. That was received by our Inland Wetland Watercourse Agency on May 6th. It was originally scheduled for a special public hearing on June 24th next week. However, that's been pushed off to July 17th. That's because we are working through the technical review of a very significant and complicated project. So just wanted to make everyone aware that public hearing should go forward on July 17th. Secondly, at your May 28th meeting, you adopted an amended version of our zoning regulations to establish cannabis establishments. Since that time, we have received an application for an additional cannabis retailer that's under site plan review as we speak. And then lastly, I expect possibly at your next meeting, you to receive a new SDD application. This would be an exciting one, and I know Ms. Gorski would probably be among the most excited. It will be our first true indoor recreation amusement facility. This is an ordinance that was brought forward almost 10 years ago now and amended 2 or 3 times in the interim in the hopes of attracting one of these types of businesses. If you do get it, it'll probably appear on your next agenda for receipt and scheduling later this summer, but it'll be exciting when you receive it. That's all I have.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions on any of those items? Okay. Then are there any does anyone have any future agenda items? No? Okay. If no one has any future agenda items, I just want to thank everyone who presented today. It's early, and to give those type of presentations first thing in the morning, but you did a great job, and thank you. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And Councilor Cortez can second that for me. He's waiting to head out to the beach. I know what he's doing.
Hang on. It's only a few steps away, but I'll second that motion.
Yeah, okay. All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.